My great pleasure to introduce to us Barbara McFarlane, who is the Scottish Area Coordinator for Parish Nursing. She's at present also working in the Steeple Church. She's come to give us an overview of parish nursing, and if there's time, maybe a little snippet of what she does in her own church. Thank you.
Apart from being Area Coordinator for Scotland for Parish Nursing and being involved in the project at the Steeple, I also still lecture in nursing 2 days a week. So it doesn't scare me too much having a group of really interested students like yourselves to teach or to have around this afternoon. Easier than talking to, what was I had the other day? I was teaching about incontinence. 220 students in the room. Just a sea of faces. So this is nice and relaxed. I hope you feel you could maybe stop me and ask me questions if you want. There will be, I promise I will leave some time for questions at the end. We've got until, when, 5 o'clock?
Just looking at me, I don't know.
Sessions at 3. So we need to be finished at past, I reckon. So I'll have to go and fast forward for a bit. I'll do a wee fast forward a bit about the history of parish nursing, just to give you an idea of where it came from. It came from America, of course. Unfortunately, an awful lot of good ideas do come from America, but we make them British or Scottish. Parish nursing is relatively new. It only started in the 1980s in Chicago. Started by a minister of a church, he's called Ranger Westberg, good sounding American name, in Chicago. And he recognised then, as it still is now in America, if you're wealthy, healthcare provision is not a big problem because you pay insurances galore. You even can insure against long-term illnesses as well and the ongoing care if you're wealthy. If you're very, very poor, unemployed, then you get a state-provided service, which is quite second class actually. But then there's a whole load of people in between there who can't afford all the health insurances on maybe the sort of basic wages that they're on. And so they're not insured for long-term conditions and have real problems when they get something like a leg ulcer or diabetes or anything that needs long-term care. So the model that he set up was very much geared to his kind of healthcare setup in his church. He had nurses and doctors in his church that were prepared to give their services free, to reach out, to show God's love and care to the people who otherwise wouldn't get health care. And parish nursing in the US very much works that way still. It's really it's about looking after congregations, because remember in America, something like 60% of people still go to church almost every Sunday, which is not quite the same as here. Would that it was like that here. So they run health clinics for their congregations, which do end up reaching out into the community as well. Parish nursing has spread quite widely throughout the world. It first went to Canada, then it gradually spread out to New Zealand and Australia, and now there's parish nurses in 27 countries. And at the beginning of April, I was really privileged to be invited to go and do a presentation at the International Parish Nursing Conference in Memphis, in Tennessee. We got to go to Graceland as well and see all the Elvis stuff, which was quite good. But it was brilliant to actually meet all these parish nurses from other parts of the world. Pakistan has 47 parish nurses. That's more than Scotland. So it's time we did a bit of catching up. Parish nursing first came to the UK in 2002. A lady called Helen Wordsworth. A friend of hers had heard about it, came back, told her, she went and found out, and she got things going in the UK. So the first up and running parish nursing projects in the UK were 2004. So we really are babies in the UK. We're just toddling yet, just growing very gradually. There's now, I believe, 74 projects running in the UK with approximately 120 parish nurses. And after next week there'll be another 9, because there's a course running in England. So what's parish nursing about? What is the aim of it? The aim is to integrate faith and health care. It's described as whole person care. I loved what Kenny Borthwick said this morning about making God real to people. And it's about Christian nurses making their faith real in their practice with real people. It's meeting real people where they're at, talking about their health issues, talking about the things that are really important to them, having the opportunity to say, have you thought about how prayer could help you? Would you mind if I prayed for you? I don't have to do it here if you'd find that embarrassing. But anyway, when you've all gone, we go into the wee room in the back and we pray for you all. And I've never had anybody say, not in your life, don't you dare pray for me. People on the whole are very welcoming of being offered prayer. Having said that, we don't...
Excuse me, I don't want to speak on that.
It's
Well, where's it gone from?
Watch it doesn't set up some alarm. I think he's through that doorway outside.
Is it the things we're decorating?
Actually, he was banging a wall down this morning.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
heard that as well.
Yeah.
But that's not quite so distracting as the music. It's not music, it's music. Anyway. Another wee sort of history lesson. Why is it that health and spiritual care, if you think about it, health, I teach health, so do some of these other folk, and there's other nurses here. What are the things that are really important for health, or what are the components of health? It's your physical health, it's your mental health, it's your emotional health, it's your social health, it's your environmental health. And what one is missing? Your spiritual health, yes. If you look back in the history of healthcare in the UK, you'll actually find that it was churches that were the providers of healthcare. I trained last century in the students love that one, in St Bartholomew's Hospital in London, and it was actually one of the very first hospitals in the UK, and it was set up by monks to provide care for the poor and the sick in central London, and it's still there doing that today. But it was done through a monastery, through a church, and for a very long time the church was the provider of care for the poor, the sick and the needy. How did it get separated out? Really from about the beginning of the 18th century, with the beginnings, the development of scientific knowledge, and that really accelerated through the 18th and 19th centuries. And what happened was that science became more important than the spiritual side of things, till it came to the point, really, I think, where scientists and scientific medicine were saying, if you can't put it in a test tube and do tests on it and measure it, then it ain't real. We don't need to bother with it. It's just stories. So the focus of medical care became scientific interventions, whether that be surgical or giving people drugs and things like that. And the spiritual side of it kind of took very second place. But they recognised that there was still a need for spiritual care, and so we got the development of a rather separate chaplaincy movement. So whenever somebody's got any spiritual needs, they're supposed to identify themselves, tell somebody, and we phone for a chaplain for them. But nurses wouldn't have been involved in spiritual care. So what we're trying to do with parish nursing is bring the two together again and say that you can't look after your body and your relationships and your work and your home and everything else unless you look after your soul as well. And particularly when people are unwell, when you're unwell you can't do lots of the normal things. You can't go to work, you can't look after your home to the same effect, you can't do leisure and travel the same way, and it's also sometimes very difficult to maintain your spiritual health. You may not be able to go and worship with the community of believers and be part of your church family. It may be very hard to focus on reading and studying God's Word and praying. And it may be that just having somebody who comes alongside you while you're unwell and can help you to pay attention to your spiritual needs as well as everything else makes a big difference in recovery. And somebody who will pray for you, for healing meaning wholeness as you go through your health journey. And that's one of the lovely definitions that I love of parish nursing, and it is walking with people on their health journey. Another one that I love is bringing God near to people. Now God is near, He is here, and we all know that. God is here, He is near, but sometimes we have to help people to see that He is near. So we bring Him near to people at difficult times in their life journey. And that is a huge privilege as a parish nurse to be able to offer that to people. There's quite a change in attitude in healthcare. I think most people know nowadays that there is not a pill for every ill. I read a study recently, I haven't brought lots of references because now that's terribly academic. I wanted to be very practical. But I read a report that was published just at the end of 2012 by a group of general practitioners, 100 general practitioners across the central belt of Scotland, who were saying, and they're in some of the most postcode deprived areas, and they were saying that so much of their time, almost all of their time, is taken up seeing people who are very anxious or very depressed or making themselves ill with worry because they haven't got enough money to pay their bills, they haven't got work and they're bored out of their minds, or their relationships are breaking up, partly because of other stressors as well, and the GP has not got anything in his book that he can prescribe for those ills. And all he can do is say to people, well, here's some antidepressants or something to relieve your anxiety. Come back in a fortnight and if it works, I'll give you more or something. And there's so little that GPs can do, and some of them long to have some other support systems available in their surgeries, in their areas, where they could send people to find wider support. And that's the kind of support that parish nurses can provide from the base of a church. Spiritual pain is something as well that GPs see a lot of, and nurses see quite a lot of in patients. The pain associated with guilt, the pain associated with shame, the pain associated with not being able to forgive people who've wronged you, and the hurts that build up because of that causes real spiritual pain. And sometimes it takes a Christian to see that and to be able to help a person to understand that that's maybe where some of their pain is coming from. Now, I see some sort of I've got quite an array of nurses here as well, I think, have I? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you think, why only Christians? Well, it isn't only Christians. You'll be pleased to know that there are faith community nurses in America who are Muslims as well. But again, it's the faith issues, it's the spiritual health and well-being. As an organisation, Parish Nursing works among Christian nurses, but we do believe that there may be opportunity for nurses in other faiths to again incorporate their faith into healthcare as well. So again, if I was talking to somebody of a different faith or no faith, I would completely respect their faith. Not try to preach at people. I'm not trained in preaching. I haven't got a degree in theology. I haven't got any of that kind of training. But I know the Lord is my Saviour, and I've spent a few years trying to learn more about His Word and understand it and listen to Him. And I do believe that He's got a caring and loving and forgiving message of grace and hope that I long to share with people that I meet, and that's the joy of being a parish nurse. You can't do that in the NHS. It's really frowned on anyway. I don't think anybody's been struck off yet for it, but it's very frowned upon.
There's somebody in trouble for it.
Yeah.
Somebody got suspended.
Yeah. To pray for somebody.
Yeah. I mean, we do pray for people. We pray ourselves for sensitivity and the gift of spiritual discernment to understand where people are at. So not walking up to people who I don't even know and saying, how is it with your soul? Because you would get a slap in the face, potentially, from some people. But there are ways, in conversation to approach the subject of what is it that really matters to you? What is it that motivates you when things are tough and you can't understand why things are happening to you? And often that's the kind of sentence that will open up a wonderful discussion with people. I've already strayed well away from my notes. There's page 2. Yeah. So some of the things that parish nurses do, we do actually work very closely with other nurses in the community. So one of the things that's quite important is to know who your local community nurses are, what the local healthcare facilities are, and to work quite closely with them. Not to work in a complementary way, not at all in an antagonistic way. We're not competition, we do different things from what the NHS does. We're not any better, we're just different. We focus on this whole care, integrating spiritual care. And seeing spiritual care as a pretty high priority, which is a slightly different balance of priorities. We work in the church rather than in the NHS, so that we've got independence from NHS. We don't have to meet NHS type targets. We don't have NHS budgets to work to. We've probably got next to no budget. But there's a lot you can do with a little. And the beauty of it is that parish nurses tend to reach out into the community rather than waiting for the community to come into them. Some examples of project activities, projects that I can think of that I know of around the UK. Lots of parish nurses offer health checks to people in the congregation or in the community, so you can come along and get weighed and measured and have your blood pressure checked and get lots of health information, health advice. Okay? So parish nurses need to be right up to date on what they're doing, obviously. Health checks. Oh, one of the things that I introduced is we do teas and coffees after church. And when I'm on the teas and coffees, they get fruit, as well as biscuits and cakes. It's about offering people choice. It's not about taking away choice from people. It's about offering healthy options in addition. So how about that? Next time you're on the teas and coffees, small bunches of grapes. The other thing to do is, just as people are coming, is cut up your apples. Because people won't eat a whole apple, but they'll eat a quarter. If you're doing satsumas, peel them for people. Wear your plastic gloves, you'll be very hygienic. Prepare them for people. If you get a peeled satsuma, you'll pick it up and eat it. If you've got to peel it while you're holding a cup of coffee, you can't do that. And where do you put the peelings? So there's a wee healthy hint for you. Even if you're not a parish nurse, you could do that. Some parish nurses do exercise classes, but you have to have specialist training to do that. You can't just go and think, right, I better get all these elderly ladies up doing step aerobics. Otherwise you have to have a cardiac arrest kit there. There are ways of learning how to do these things safely. And if you're practicing, how many of you are nurses? There's loads of you who are nurses. Yes, yeah. You have to practice within your nursing and midwifery code of professional conduct, which says you can't do anything as a nurse that you've not been properly taught how to do, and you must do it properly. So we're very careful about that in parish nursing. Part of exercise classes might be false prevention. And nowadays, health visitors don't do the over 75 health checks that they used to do. So huge scope for parish nurses in there to be helping people to stay healthy. Things like, have you been for a sight test? How are your glasses working for you? Because falls can be due to poor eyesight or getting new varifocals, and I know about that. Or it can be related to problems like not getting to the toilet on time. And there's all sorts of things that contribute to falls that nurses have got the skills and the ability to assess and advise people about, and then maybe refer them to other agencies for support and help as well. Some parish nurses run bereavement support groups in their community and take people referred to them by GPs. So there's the opportunity there to really walk alongside people at a very difficult time in their life. Some work with people who've got addictions and homelessness. Befriending and lunch clubs, again with the opportunity. The befriending is about people's social health and well-being, about preventing or relieving social isolation, getting people feeling that they're joined up to their community again, and maybe getting out and about quite a lot more as well. And quite a lot of parish nurses do nice things like hand massage, which is a wonderful stress buster. It's not too hard to learn how to do that properly. Some run health fairs, so you might have a church open day and have a health stand at it as well, with lots of different health advice. Increasing awareness of current health issues. So one of the things I thought about doing but haven't got around to it yet is thinking about when it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, why couldn't I be making the congregation a bit more aware about that? And various other sort of health issues. We could be, again, helping the NHS to promote health awareness in our communities. Why do we want to be healthy? Hey, there's a question for you to answer. What is the point in creation? Under God, what is the point of being healthy? Why do you want to be well?
We can live life, can we? Relate and serve.
To serve, yes. You can't serve if you're not healthy. So when you're given health, you're given opportunities to serve. Yeah. So very close tie up in that. So that's some of the things that they can do. Relaxation classes, cooking on a budget class. We're about to do some of that as well. Helping to take people to appointments. Sometimes people are going for a hospital appointment and they're really quite worried about it. And they wouldn't maybe ask somebody to go with them, but maybe the parish nurse could offer to go. I had a wonderful experience in my own church actually. An elderly gentleman who was very hard of hearing was to go to be assessed to have his cataract operated on. And he'd go up to the hospital and have an appointment, and then he would go to a pre-assessment clinic, and then he'd be admitted, and then he'd be followed up, and then the other eye would be done. Now, we kind of knew that he might struggle with some of that, and particularly with just being a day case. So I was able to chat with him about it beforehand, and he hadn't really much of a clue about what was going to happen. And I said, would you like me to come with you to make sure you understand what they're saying to you? And so I was able to go along and really act as his advocate and help him to ask the questions that he needed to know about things. And then to make sure that as a church we also gave him extra support. We do Meals on Wheels anyway in the church for people who've just come home from hospital or had a baby or moved house or getting a new kitchen in or whatever. And so we were able to dovetail a whole lot of things. The nurses came in the morning and did his eye drops, but that was it, eye drops and then away. But there was an awful lot more that he needed quite a bit of help with. And we were able to do that, and I think because of that and the care that was coordinated around him, he was able to stay in his own home for quite a lot longer than he might have otherwise managed before he eventually needed a bit more care. But lots of things that parish nurses can do. I'm going to do a wee, there's a good thing in here, and you'll see it. I'll give you all these to take away. And it's got a list of all the things that parish nurses can do. I'll give you one each now, just pass these around a wee bit. And inside there's a wee list of things that parish nurses might well be involved in doing.
Does the RCN recognise this?
Yes.
You know,
One of the
one
things that we have to be very careful of as parish nurses is the church has to, this is coming in later on, but I'll do it just now. No, I'll do it now because you've asked. When you practice as a parish nurse, you're accountable to the Nursing and Midwifery Council for your practice at all times. And the NMC, Nursing and Midwifery Council, recognises the hours that you spend in parish nurse as practice hours. And also they recognise the course for parish nursing as continuous professional development. And we also run study days and update days for parish nurses. And we actually require you to do quite a lot of hard work for that, for the parish nurses. So that counts for their CPD as well. Parish nurses need to have their own professional indemnity insurance. Because say I gave somebody the wrong advice and they decided to sue me, would you be better sitting there, Jane, away from that noise, because it's right in your ear. If you gave somebody the wrong advice and they sued you, who would defend you? Who would stand up for you? So you need to have professional indemnity insurance. And we tend to recommend RCN because they know about parish nursing and they do cover us for that. You need to have third-party liability insurance if you're working in a church, in case a roof tile falls down on somebody's head or something. So your church insurer needs to know that you're doing that. You know, if a chair leg breaks and somebody falls over and cracks their head, that's covered by the church, not by the RCA. So you need all of these things in place, indeed. Mm-hmm.
But this probably is going to come up, but follows on. Is the church your legal employer?
The church is your employer. Now I work as a volunteer, so I have a volunteer agreement with the church.
Right.
But my colleague Davina is paid by the church, so she's an employee of the church.
If
But
you're,
we're both accountable to the church in terms of the Kirk Session is our employer, as it employs the minister and the church administrator and the cleaner.
And is it the same rate of pay as a nurse?
Now that's
I'm just
hugely
trying to
different.
think about
That's a very variable situation about what a parish nurse might be paid. A church could decide that they would pay somebody on the same sort of rate, they would pay their parish nurse on the same kind of rate as they would pay a ministry support worker, for example. Or they might decide to pay them at a nursing rate. And I did do a mapping of the role of a parish nurse against the role of, I looked at band 5 and 6, and you can't really match it to 6, so it's somewhere like a band 5 salary scale that we tend to use. Were you going to ask a question?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're a voluntary worker, what do you do about paying your insurance? Do you have to pay all your own, or just your church?
I'm in a position where I pay my own, but you could ask your church to pay it, for that to be part of your expenses.
Yeah.
You also have to pay, now I think it's fairly
You're not
Right.
saying,
RCN,
Yeah, yes, I know.
but your NMC payment has always traditionally been the individual's responsibility
Yes,
to pay.
yes, yes.
So you pay your Nursing and Midwifery Council registration annually, and you've also got your RCN membership. And if the church will help you with that, then so much the better, obviously. I was going to come to things like costs and that, because I see you're all very practically interested in how it actually works on the, in the church. So you've got the thing there. Can I just go through some of the things about what things a parish nurse can do, some of the other things there. Pastoral care, sharing in the church's ministry team, particularly supporting. You may have a pastoral care team already, but it's being able to offer health advice on a professional basis within pastoral care. So it might not be to everybody, but it might be that there's somebody, a visitor goes to see somebody in the church and they're not very well, and they think, oh, you know, they don't want to bother the doctor, so perhaps the parish nurse could go in and just assess the situation and maybe encourage the person then, right, I really think you need a doctor's appointment. Do you want me to help you to phone and make one? I'll come and take you if you want, etc., etc. Again, it's about facilitating, making things happen for people. Advice for health. Again, similar to what you would be doing in your pastoral care, but the other stuff like giving people healthy options, encouraging people to live healthily. Reducing stress, identifying signs of stress. Hey, how about doing a quick check-up on your minister? How stressed is the minister? How stressed is the pastoral care convener? You know, what could you use a nurse? Can you recognise the signs of stress? Are they tired easily? Are they a bit fractious? Are they not eating well, or are they overeating? You know, how many fudge donuts does it take to show that somebody's in stress? And ways of identifying the signs of stress. More ill health, keep getting a cold, feeling run down and tired. Not just your minister, lots of other people. Intercessory prayer, it's a big role for parish nurses, and we know from research that intercessory prayer works. If you pray for people, God acts. He answers prayer, and we all believe that. And so praying for people, praying for health, praying for people, even at a distance, works. Self-care, something healthier than me time. I don't know if any of you read women's magazines. You can't know. I'm really relieved about that. But I'm sure even in men's health magazines, if you read them as well, there's all this stuff about, you know, you've got to look after yourself, you've got to have me time. Well, as Christians we would say, actually, you really need God's time. You need time just sitting with the Lord, just coming close to Him. Not getting away from it all, coming right in close to His heart. And that is where you will find the springs of living water that will refresh and bring life back in to yourself. It's much more than me time. Quite a lot of parish nurses are involved in healing services, in praying for healing for people. I'm not involved in that specifically, not in hands-on healing prayer, but we do pray for people for healing, for their whole health and about their health as well. So that's Parish. Yes, Parish. It's a good mnemonic, isn't it? And the nursing, again, I'm going to let you take those leaflets away and look at them at your own leisure, because I don't want to go on forever with that. You can read that. Things a parish nurse can't do. We don't do flu jabs, immunisations, anything like that. We just do not have the infrastructure to be able to do that. The NHS does that very well. You've got to have all your stuff here, anti-anaphylaxis stuff. You've got to have a proper place to do it. You've got to meet enormous standards in order to be able to run an immunisation clinic. It's not something a church should get involved in at all. Not a worry, we don't go there. We don't do dressings, so we don't have a leg ulcer clinic. The NHS does that very well. Some parish nurses we can offer a bit of first aid, but not much more than the general public could offer. Just a wee bit of first aid when it's needed. What else do we not do? We can't get people moved up waiting lists. It's amazing what people will ask you to do when they think you're a nurse. That we could. Nor do we attempt to cure sick churches, sick congregations, and there's some of those around, aren't there, where relationships have gone wrong within churches, where that's not a job for a parish nurse. And we don't have any access to NHS patient notes. That sometimes is quite a bit of a bind. I would love to be able to access notes to get a bit of continuity. We can send information with a person's consent to their GP. That's not a problem. So if we've done a health check, for example, and there are some issues come up, then there might be signs and symptoms of diabetes or something like that, and we might want somebody to go and see their GP. We do capillary blood testing, and we do capillary blood cholesterol levels now as well. And so if we detect abnormalities in that, we will recommend people to attend their GP, and we give them a sheet with their results away. It's up to them really what they do with it. We keep a copy confidentially, locked up with their permission, but we recommend that they take the information to their GP to show that they've had a proper health check done as well. Other things. I've got pages mixed up here. What I want you to do, I'm just going to go on to it because time's flying away. Is it 2:30? When do we have to finish? 2:45? 2:45. Is that when the next one starts or when this one finishes? Alright, goody. I'm going to give you all now a bit of paper, and you're all going to have to do a wee bit of work. Have you got pens? There's plenty of pens on the table if you want a pen.
Yeah.
And you can do this in twos. Do it in 2 or 3s. Not competition. There aren't any grapes for prizes. Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody else need a pen or a pencil? Anybody else want a pen or pencil? Alright. Now what I want you to do is think about your own church. Think about your congregation. And think about your community. 3 C's: your church, your congregation, your community. Can you identify some things, some areas where you think a parish nurse could have some health input? Just for a few minutes, use the sheet I've given you. Think things like How does your church promote healthy living? Think about the size of your congregation, the age pattern. You've got lots of children, toddlers, teenagers. What are the health issues for teenagers in your church? What are the health issues for older people? What are the health issues for mums and toddlers? And I'll be quiet for a minute. The video won't know what's hit it. You can do it as a diagram and draw pretty pictures. And you can chat with each other.
No copying.
I want to give you a couple of minutes to sit out your back.
Yeah, definitely.
Because he was on holiday Wednesday.
We have a very good selection of snacks and health inspired. It could be oatcakes, crackers, mac and cheese. Oh no, we never have anything like that at all.
Oh, what a shame.
No. Do you know what? They used to get biscuit and juice before, but now it's always health based, and they don't look for, they never ask what they don't look for. Saying that it'll come up into the chart. If they're in the chart, it's embarrassing. If they're in the chart, it's another biscuit they can't yeah, like we Yeah, I think it's kind of everywhere, but
I can see that you're not short of ideas. Are you?
just have
Have I fired your imagination? I got your imagination
Yeah, that's all good tell.
Parish nurse doing exercise class to him tunes. Yes, that happens actually. It's a hymn tune. Yes. You know, sorry, excuse my singing, I hope that didn't get radio. What about, making sure you start your lunch club with a wee time of prayer and giving thanks to God for the good things that are there. Lots of ways of just introducing Christian faith to mixed groups of people. There may be folk who aren't Christians there may be folk who are there because they're interested in actually seeing what these Christians do. What is it that's different that we do? One of the things that really came out when I was at the conference in America, they were talking about what is it that is distinctive about Christian nursing care. And it's the fact that Christian nurses belong to a Christian community that is marked by the love of Jesus Christ, the love of the Father for us, that He gave us Jesus. And that's the kind of love that doesn't give up. And it's the love that forgives and goes on forgiving and welcomes people back even when they don't think they're worth it. And it's this, it's a loving community that churches should be. How many churches really are a loving community? Let's be different as nurses. Let's build our churches into loving communities. One of the things that parish nurses do is get lots of volunteers on board to help. You can't do everything yourself. Again, as a nurse, you've got the ability to assess the capabilities of your volunteers, to know what they can do, and to give them appropriate training about things like confidentiality, about self-care, about lone worker policies, etc. So a nurse can take on to teach people how to give aspects of care quite safely and to work together as a team then. So you can draw in volunteers, and volunteering is one thing that's very good that churches can provide. And in fact, there's a growing interest from government in what voluntary organisations, and particularly churches, can do to support the health of communities. Because as you all know, with the huge amount of cutbacks that there are people who are falling through the net of community care. Now, where they maybe need statutory care, we must ensure that they are getting it by working as their advocates. Parish nurses are not there to pick up the pieces behind the NHS or health and social care workers. We're not there to do that. But we're there to maybe go the extra mile with some people that they need in order for them to know that they are loved, that they are part of the beloved community. That's the word that they were using at this conference that I thought was so wonderful. a beloved community, beloved of God, loving one another, filled with His love, with enough love to pour it out and share it with others. And that's something that the NHS is not particularly specifically endowed to do. Is it really? Have you got some ideas of where you might take this? Do you want to give me a bit of feedback?
Can I ask a question first?
Yes.
One of the things that strikes me is that we've all come up with lots of ideas that are going to come out. How does it usually work in that, does a church decide, yes, we want a parish nurse, and then it's up to the parish nurse to decide what's needed? How do you have them believe it's their vision? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, how do you get started with
Well,
this?
and how do you get, because if you do it because you think, yeah, we could do with whatever we all come up with, if the church aren't, the Kirk session or the church members don't think it's their idea and think it's their vision, then you can try as hard as you will, but things don't work.
Yeah.
But
It's
so,
funny you should say that. I was just thinking about that while you were actually, just before you were talking. I was thinking we have a couple of retired GPs in our congregation, and the first thing I was thinking about was trying to fire them up and get them on board, because they hold quite a weight in our community.
Yes.
Just build it a wee bit at a time, so when you throw it across
Just
the
get their
future and
enthusiasm
session,
on
there's
board.
already a sort of will for it.
people who think, yes, a parish nurse would be a good idea.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, how do churches get the vision to have a
How do
parish
you get
nurse?
going? That's actually just the bit I was coming to.
Oh,
That's great, because that means I need to talk about that just now. If I can find the
Because you
sheet
can't
of paper.
start programmes or whatever until you've got the church behind you, can you?
For a parish nursing project, you really need a nurse. Yes. So if you've got the nurses there, that is good. If you are at a church that doesn't have a nurse, but you would love a parish nursing project, you can get in touch with Parish Nursing Ministries UK and see if they've got any spare nurses. Sometimes a nurse has a church that cannot or will not support them, and they would love to be a parish nurse and want to train to become a parish nurse, but they could work in a different church if there were a church reasonably nearby that was looking for a parish nurse. In general, though, the model is that it's usually a nurse within a church who feels or hears the call of the Lord to become a parish nurse. And that was what happened to me. I really felt God calling me to find out more, and the more I found out about it, the more convinced I was that it was the right thing to do. We went and did the course. So your parish nurse must be registered with the NMC currently. So if they've fallen off the end of the register, they cannot call themselves a nurse, unfortunately. And the only way would be to do a return to nursing course if they felt that was appropriate. I'm not sure that many churches could afford to put people through that. But again, if the individual really felt it. Another important aspect for a parish nurse is spiritual maturity, as well as a good deal of experience. I wouldn't take on a parish nurse straight out the school of nursing. Not for quite a while, and not until they've really become quite well versed in practicing with a minimum amount of supervision. Because as a parish nurse, you're going to be on your own making decisions quite a lot of the time. So that requires a fair amount of nursing experience and wisdom, along with your spiritual maturity. Most parish nurses have got some community experience, but it is not essential. I don't have community experience. I was an acute medical ward sister, and then moved into nursing education, and I've been in the ivory tower of education, mainly teaching public health, which was useful because I had all sorts of useful contacts through that. Parish nurses need to complete a parish nurse education programme, and it runs approximately once a year in Scotland, And the next parish nursing course in Scotland is the 17th to the 20th of September. And it's 4 days residential. It's at the Beard Christian Retreat Centre just outside Perth. It's run by people who are qualified nursing lecturers, and it's led by somebody who has their qualification from the International Parish Nursing Resource Centre as well. So it's a well put together course. I've got a copy of the timetable of the next course that's running in May. If anybody wants to have a look at that, just to get an idea of what teaching goes into the parish nursing course, it's quite interesting. A parish nurse needs the support of a church. You can't work without the church being behind you, whether it's another church or your own church. When I felt called into parish nursing, I asked my house group that I went to, I asked them to pray with me and for me over a period of several months. Really, I didn't want this to be, I was terrified that it might be my good idea rather than God's call. So I asked them very specifically to pray about that. And then after I'd been down to visit a couple of parish nursing projects, I came back and they said, right, now it's time, you need to tell the Kirk Session. And when I told them, I was just amazed at the reception. And we've got about 3 or 4 GPs in our Kirk Session, and they were all just quite smitten with the idea, which made me surprised that they were all in favour of us working in a complementary way, not in any way competitive to what they do. A lot of them would love to have a parish nurse in the surgery, somebody who could send somebody. You know, there's quite a lot of Christian GPs, and again, they're not even encouraged to pray with their patients, but to be able to send them along to somebody with whom they could pray and have a chat about things more spiritual, the things that you can't put on a prescription pad. But we don't do that. We don't work for GPs, because that would mean working for the NHS. We keep our focus in the church community, bringing back church and health together.
Could the church have a parish nurse who had an office in a GP community, GP facility? Just wasn't employed by the GP but by the church?
Well, I would think there would be the feasibility in a small, say in a village setting, there could be a very close relationship.
Yes.
There's a GP, I've got a friend who's a Christian GP in a small town down south, and all the GPs in the practice are Christian, and they have something called, I know there's the movement called Healing Rooms, and that's not what it is. They have like what they call a prayer room.
Yes.
And it is separate, so they can recommend to people that they come at the time that the prayer room will be open and receive prayer.
Yes.
And that I could see a parish nurse fitting with that.
Yeah, you
Yes.
could. Because they wouldn't have to employ you.
They wouldn't have to employ you.
You could be a voluntary parish nurse
Yes.
attached to your church who's
It's very-
based in.
It's about confidentiality as well.
The spiritual care team in NHS Lanarkshire ran a very short pilot in one of the Lanarkshire GPs doing that. I don't know what, I mean,
They've done it in Dundee as well.
Sorry?
They've done it in a couple of practices in Dundee as well. The NHS spiritual care have put a chaplain into a GP surgery 1 or 2 afternoons a week. And it went down very well, except some of the spiritual care that the NHS dishes out is not particularly Christian. It's very sort of
Yes, it's very free.
very liberal, very free.
I think with GP practices, you would actually have to get on board. You wouldn't just have to get your session on board, but you'd have to get the practice on board as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, if there weren't Christian GPs.
Well, you would. You'd have to get them on board. You'd have to get your session on board. Because the thing is, as Barbara says, that if you were under NHS umbrella, you would have to be very non-specific in your spiritual care.
Yeah.
But if you didn't belong to GP practice but really had rooms there, then you could be specifically your own religion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have to be employed by the practice to work in the practice all the time. You can easily have a room if the practice was agreeable.
You could rent a room from them potentially.
Precisely,
You could have a room at the church.
Yes, yeah, well, that's what I was thinking about.
Have a room in the church,
Uh-huh.
or a corner of the church, where you can put up a couple of little
Do you not have
screens.
a room in your church?
I do,
Oh,
yeah,
that's
we,
what
Davina and I have
the
this.
thing.
The Steeple Church in Dundee is just undergoing massive renovation, and Davina and I have got the poshest office in the church, the nicest office. We've got the biggest window.
So can somebody
lovely.
drop in, or do you have certain
We're-
days, like,
We,
you know, like a, is it drop in
they
and
could
have a
do. We often go
quiet chat
out
or
to
something
them.
about-
We often go out
yeah,
to do the health checks, but people can come in and see us.
you know,
So-
just to say what's on their mind, what do you think I should do, should I?
Yes. We're hoping to develop that,
Uh-huh.
particularly because one of the things the church wants to do since renovation is open up a sort of afternoon club type activity for people who are around the city centre. And Davina and I want to be right in there offering
Well, I think
health
it's a good
checks and health
idea.
advice. I think we should be there. It would
So
mainly
you
be
could-
older people,
Uh-huh.
so again, it would be a lot that we could offer there.
They might think, well, I'm not actually going to church.
That's right,
That's right.
yes. um,
Yeah.
Parish nursing needs, we're back to getting it set up, you need to have a realistic budget, because there are costs associated with almost any ministry. The parish nursing course costs £545, which is quite a bit of money, but not a huge amount when you compare it with other nursing courses at this level.
Yeah.
And that is for 4 full days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night accommodation and all meals included, all the teaching and the teaching materials included, and returning for a day 4 of the course. You don't have to pay any more for that. The only extra to pay is transport to get there and back. And that pays for the course. The course is assessed by a folder of evidence, which is marked by registered tutors, and a very nice badge are awarded on completion. But that moves the project from being a supported project to being an accredited project that can get going. Parish nurses also pay an annual fee to Parish Nursing Ministries UK. Now that comes from the church that is supporting the project. And it's £1 a day, £365 a year. And for that, parish nurses get a monthly magazine, e-magazine. They get a minimum of 2 visits per annum from their coordinator. And part of the coordinator's role is to make sure that you're meeting up with the quality standards written by Parish Nursing UK. They also attend 2 study days a year that have really only travelling costs associated with them. Sometimes people, the Scottish nurses tend to say they want their study days at the Beald and they want to stay the night there before because it's such a lovely place. And it's about doing the self-care bit as well while you're there.
They have the masseuse there.
Yeah, and they have the swimming pool and everything else.
So is your accommodation included in the
In the final, yes, everything.
Yeah.
That's total.
Yeah.
That's an all-inclusive, non-holiday
Yeah.
week. Parish nurses are also encouraged to attend the annual UK Symposium, which is in November down in Leicestershire. And again, it's the opportunity to get together with other parish nurses, hear what other projects are doing, share good practice, good speakers. It's a good conference actually. Anybody who's interested in parish nursing would actually find just attending the symposium very interesting. It would be a good way to find out a lot more about different kinds of parish nursing projects. Now I could go on and on, I could do a whole day about parish nursing. If you would like me to do something like that, I would happily do that. Do a one-day taster about what is parish nursing about. I've not really managed to tell you anything about what we do at the steeple. Not really. Well, we do this drop-in clinic twice a week for homeless people. And we've set up this fantastic network called DD1 or DDI, Dundee Drop-In Network, working with the NHS, the police, the courts, the food bank, starter packs, all the different soup kitchens and everything else that's running to try and make sure that people on the streets who've got drug and addiction problems or are homeless, that they know what they can get. And we produced a wonderful wee leaflet. I think my last one's gone. Can I find one? Oh yeah, I've got one. We produced this wee, see my handbag? Fantastic little leaflet, very robust, pocket size. And we're finding, I had 5 new people on Thursday at the drop-in, and 4 of them, when I said to them, how did you hear about us? They pulled this out and said it was this. We've got a new one being produced at the moment, an update.
Do you put these into GP surgeries?
Yes, GP
libraries,
surgeries.
pharmacies.
We've got them in a lot of places. This was a pilot run, and we only had something like 6,000 printed, and they've just gone. So we're getting 12,000 next time. Hopefully they'll do nearly a year, and there'll be a slightly different colour so that people will know it's the new version, have the date on it. But that's a brilliant example of interagency working, led by the churches. Really, basically it's led by the parish nurses in Dundee, with the help of some of the other organisations. And it's got us doing joined up thinking and working together with lots of other agencies. They hugely respect us. We start all the meetings and finish them in prayer, even with very secular organisations on board, because that's how we work in the church, and we want them to recognise that. We're not kowtowing to them, they're actually coming to our patch, so they do it the way we want to do it, and it's lovely, great. If you would like, if you're interested, I will come and speak to your church, if you like. Take one of these.